us don't give a lot of thought to tool maintenance as long as our tools are functioning properly. Particularly simple tools like this belt and disc sander combination. Other than making sure that the belt isn't too loaded with crud and making sure it's tracking properly and giving it a vacuuming every now and then, we really don't give it much thought. However, I recently had an experience that I'd like to share with you regarding a necessary maintenance for this tool that's not even mentioned in the manual, and one which the techie over at Jet whom I called was not even familiar with. But I know if it happened to me, and I give the tool relatively light use, then it certainly has happened to other people. The situation was that I was sanding the outside of a box lid I had just cut, doing it as usual, rotating it to make it nice and smooth, getting rid of all the blade marks and the burn marks and stuff like that, which usually leaves me with nice straight sides. And when I was finished sanding it, I discovered that rather than the sides being straight, they were curved. Something that had never happened to me before. Let me see if I can show it to you. I sanded a piece. I get a light behind it, and I think you should see that it's meeting in the middle, but at the top and the bottom it's curved out. The fact that there are spaces in the top and the bottom means it wasn't a problem with not setting the table square to the belt, although I did check that. So I was stymied. Not wanting to ruin my piece, I finished it up by using the disc sander part of the machine. The disc is firmly attached to a metal base here, and I had absolutely no problem. So I figured something was going on here that was flexing, that was giving way, that was giving me unequal sanding. I just wasn't sure what it was. And since it wasn't the belt, which I checked, never put your good tools on a small surface. And it didn't seem to be the backing. I used my very best straight edge and ran it up, and except for the part that it curves over, it seemed absolutely straight. Right now I was really confused, because if it was absolutely straight, I wouldn't be sanding in a curve. So I called Jet Tech Support, explained the problem to the techie, let him know that I was experienced using the tool and I was not rocking it or doing anything that would create the problem. And although he was unfamiliar with it, he worked logically, and he suggested that the graphite pad that lies underneath the belt and cushions it might be the problem. Now, I'll bet you never knew that behind the belt there was a graphite pad. And not only that, but the graphite pad was removable and meant to be replaced. Nowhere in your manual will it say that this could be a problem. So I loosened the belt and I took a peek underneath, and sure enough, I saw quite a bit of wear. This granular surface was smooth and flattened, and I even found that there was a gouge at the end. And I said, okay, something's happening. I realized that for the kind of work I do, I'm really using the 2 inches of the pad that are right above the table. Just to double check this hypothesis, I sanded a piece up here. It was hard to hold, but I was able to do it, and sure enough, absolutely dead on accurate. I asked the techie if it were possible to remove the pad and reverse it, since this whole big pad is only getting used for about 2 inches, but he said it would probably rip coming off. He said the new one could be attached with spray adhesive. As it turns out, having purchased a new pad, it has a sticky backing. It's a peel-off. So it should be a no-brainer, perhaps some removing of the glue residue, but I decided to go ahead with the fix, and what I'll do now is I'll remove the belt and show you what the pad looks like without the belt. When I took the belt off, the source of my problem became immediately apparent. As you can see, there's a big dip in the graphite backing, just where I'm sanding, and that's where the wood was sitting while the wood around it was being sanded away. And that was obviously the source of the problem. In general, if you look at the area here, although it's not as dramatic, it's smooth all along here. There's a sizable gouge over here. And this is with paper that was not overly tightened. The gouge is not present anywhere else, at both ends, and explains why I was getting the curvature. I mean, this is down to, you would say, bare metal, you know, if you thought it were metal. And that may be one of the reasons why they have the pad. So our next step is going to be to remove this pad with a putty knife. It looks like it's going to peel off. There's a backing here. We may need some mineral spirits or acetone. We'll experiment to loosen it up and get the bed nice and clean to receive the new graphite pad. Well, we removed the pad. Unfortunately, it left a very thick layer of residue. There was no way we could get it off together. So we tried heat, we tried mineral spirits, we tried acetone, and as a last resort, I just ran out and bought a little bottle of Goo Gone. And the answer is no. We called tech support, they were clueless. And when we asked, is there anyone around who knows, the answer was no. So, with a plastic scraper, and I think once this stuff dissipates, I'll start an application of heat to soften it a little bit. We're just going to keep on going. It is coming out nice and clean when you finally get it down, but it is a bear. I'm glad that you don't need to do it typically more than once every 3 or 4 years, because this is not fun. I will show you what it looks like when it's all nice and clean in a couple of hours, days, weeks, whatever. We're getting there. We discovered that embedded deeply in the instruction on the Goo Gone were to let it sit. That was embedded in with the laundering after you use an instruction, so I missed it the first time around. So we let it sit. It seems to help a little bit, and then we realized it'd be easier to let it sit if it were in a horizontal position, as well as easier to scrape. So as you can see, we're getting there. We will get this off. So it looks like it'll be a matter of maybe another hour or so, not days or years as it was starting to feel. Well, as you can see, we're almost there. We put it on, let it soak for about a half an hour, the Goo Gone, and it did seem to work. And in some instances, it even peeled off, but it also sticks to gloves. So don't use anything that you want to hold on to. But I think after this, we'll wipe it off. You'll make sure it's good and clean, and then when it's thoroughly dried, we'll apply the new graphite pad, and then we should be good to go. But a new project has just presented itself, and that's to make an auxiliary sanding table that will sit on top of the table as it is, so that we can access more of the belt. That would be best used just in the perpendicular position, but that's where most of the sanding is done anyway. So this project then gave birth to another project, but what else is new? We just installed the new graphite pad. It is indeed graphite. They don't warn you about that. And it was self-stick, so we just gradually peeled this away and put it down. It wasn't quite square, but that doesn't matter. The belt doesn't go all the way over to the end anyway. And we're going to put it back up in place. Later on I'll tighten the set screw down here, which holds it in place. And here we have the newly attached, slightly out of square, but I think that'll be okay, graphite pad. And I think this should solve the problem. As I mentioned earlier, we will probably build an auxiliary table even if it just raises it up an inch or two. Not too heavy because of the nature of the table that I use on the side, which doesn't hold its adjustment very well. But I think this will solve the problem. So if you've been puzzled by poor performance from your belt sander, then check and see what's underneath the belt. And it's probably not a bad idea to check every time you change the belt. We certainly are going to do it going forward, as they say. And I hope you found this video useful. Thank you for watching.